Morning, welcome to Greenwood Bonsai Studio here today. Yesterday I was teaching an introductory bonsai course, got another one happening tomorrow, and today we're working on all sorts of stuff here in the studio. Thought I'd just show you a little bit of what we're doing. There's an assortment of trees in here that we're currently working on. We've got a display of trees here on the left hand side, trees from my collection. You might have seen some of them in the past. Ones that you probably haven't seen, a little Korean hornbeam of mine, quite twiggy. It's just in to have a bit of a prune. It's very well ramified in a handmade stone monkey bonsai pot. You've probably seen the Arakawa before, beautiful rough bark. Another one of my little Japanese maples here in a handmade Dan Barton pot on display. A cedar of Lebanon here that I've been styling for the last 4 or 5 years. This is a cornice. We put some photos on Facebook of it a few months ago. It's recently come back into my collection. It's just about opening all the flowers. We're hoping to get some really nice photographs of this in a few days' time once these flowers have fully opened. Over here on the table, we've just had another shipment of indoor trees to go on the website with some bush cherries here and some Chinese elms. These are just being prepared to be listed on the website this afternoon. Here we've got an Ezo spruce, another tree from my collection, a twin trunk Ezo, and my Siberian elm that you've probably all seen before. We did a little video on this. One of our first videos was on this tree. We're still just finishing off around the studio, trying to get organised after the refurbishment. We've just had a selection of large Chinese elms arrive. There's a tree over here, look, that we're going to be doing a little bit of work on, which got me on to thinking about Chinese elms. And this one here is one that I've had for about 4 years. In fact, I looked on my phone of when I first bought it, and I bought it 4 years ago tomorrow to the day. And I'm just going to do a bit of a repot on that in a minute. When I first got it on the photograph, you can see there wasn't much apex on the tree at all, and it's really developed and got quite twiggy. It's in a Japanese pot, handmade, but there's a crack at the back of the pot, so we're going to put it into a new pot. Let me show you, there's a pot over here I think we're going to use. I've got a couple of ones we could use. This is an old Brian Albright pot, which I thought might be suitable, but then I've also got this Chinese handmade glazed with this smoky glaze on it, and I think this will work quite well because the tree's got quite a lot of grey in the bark, and that's why I like it in this colour pot. I'm going to try and get it into this one. Might be a little bit tricky because we've got the width of this tree. When you get it into a pot, we've got surface through right here at the front and right here at the back, but that pot is a little bit wider. Over here we've got the big cedar that I'm currently working on. Just need to finish that off when I get a moment. And then over here we've got a little Shohin juniper that I trimmed yesterday, just to show some of the students the pruning of a juniper. We've got a little blue cypress, a boulevard cypress, that I did on the course yesterday. That was from one of these trees over here. That was it. That was it before, look, and after. Now this is what the students will be doing this afternoon. And here in front of me, I've been working on these. I've got 300 Japanese quince seedlings that have just come in, and I've been working my way through pruning these back. Like so, there's a bucket of them here, look, ready to be potted up. So there's quite a few of those. They're going to be potted up this afternoon. Before I did those, done some Japanese larch, and these young seedlings that we've trimmed back. We trimmed them back on the top and the bottom, and they'll just go into these little 9cm square pots like that to grow on this year and to sell on the seedling category on the website. Got some more of these large elms over here at the end of the studio, and it's all been quite a busy day. Eugene's just not taking any notice of anything, look, just quite settled down, chilled out, doing what he usually does, having a busy day at work. So we've got all sorts of things on the go today in the studio, and I'm now going to show you the repotting on this Chinese Elm Bonsai. Okay, so we finished our morning tasks in the studio today. Had a bit of a tidy up, ready for the courses. So my next job today was to just finish off or start repotting this elm tree. I said before, it's in a Japanese pot, but it's got a crack in it, so it's about time it was repotted. I can't quite remember whether we did this one last year or not. So first of all, up, obviously with most trees, it's been wired into the pot here, so you need to just snip off the wires underneath that hold it in. They've been securing the tree into the pot, and then it should pop out there. We might have to run something around the edge of the pot. Yeah, that's a little bit tight. So it's got a bit of an incurved lip on this pot as well, and also these roots here go right to the edge, so it might need a little bit of persuasion to pop out the pot. There we go. Tricky to get it out there because there's a bit of an incurved lip on the edge of the pot, but now it's out like that. Let's get rid of that old pot we left out of the way for now. We can do a little bit of work on the tree. So just get a bin under the table. Just use a root hook. Just work away around the edge of the root ball. And this Chinese elm, been in my collection, like I say, for 4 years. I bought it 4 years ago tomorrow, and I've been developing the branches and getting better ramification and twigs on it over those 4 years. It's always been in a bonsai pot since I've owned it, and I grow it in neat akadama. It responds fairly well. Sometimes at the beginning of the growing season, to get a bit of a head start to the season, I pop it in a greenhouse to get it growing a bit earlier. Just working your way around, just combing away the soil, combing the roots out. There's a little bit of moss around the base of the trunk as well. I'm going to tidy that up, see if we can't just brush some of that off. And I remember now that I struggled getting it in that pot initially because we've got quite a spread of surface roots on this tree. Last year it had a really good year, it grew really well, and I trimmed this tree back probably 4 or 5 times during the growing season. It's really quite a strong, prolific grower. Just comb away the soil from the underside here, get rid of that old soil, and it's going in a similar size pot to the one it was in, so we don't have to completely bare root it, but if I can get rid of some of this old akadama, it will allow us to incorporate new fresh substrate. Once the roots are combed out, we can give them a trim back for length, work your way all the way around and underneath. Quite a fleshy root on these. They never cut particularly cleanly, even with a decent pair of scissors. Get rid of that. Around to this side. See, it's got a very flat root system on this tree. It's really in the depth of pot that it was in so that visually the pot balances the weight of the trunk. It doesn't need to really be in a pot quite as deep as that, horticulturally speaking. Ready? I'll just have a quick tidy up as we go. So you can see the depth of root we're down to there. Let's see if we can give it a bit of a brush and tidy up on this lower trunk. I'll just use a hand brush on this initially, and then we can use a little nylon Japanese brush just to get rid of some of these mossy areas here. Just to tidy up a few little weeds in here. You can just take those out with tweezers. We don't want too much moss growing up this bark, it can cause it to rot. Also it can harbour little pests underneath it. So if we can scrub this off, it'll be better. There's a little crossing roots just here, coming out from this point, coming across there, so that wants to be snipped off. That's easy enough to do. And then a little bit more tidying up in here. So next thing is get it potted. We've got a few choices. We've got this, I found this brown all-bright pot when I was looking for sort of similar size pots. Might be a bit tight for size, and it's a bit shallower than the pot it was in before. I don't know if it'll fit in. It'll just fit into there, look. Okay, that's a bit low down. It's going to sit at about this sort of level, and you can see that better than I can looking at the front of the tree. It's not too bad in that, but I sort of favoured this one. Had this pot for a while, a set of 3 pots in this shape and glaze, and been wanting to try and use one for a while. Now this is handmade pot. This side is probably the best side of the pot. When you're potting a tree like this, if you're using a handmade pot, you know, it's a handmade pot, it's not just come off a production line as much, and it might have been hand glazed. This particular one, look, tiny little drip just there. Not a massive issue, but I'd rather have that at the back of the pot than at the front, so I'm going to put that at the back. So we're going to use that side of the pot as the front, and let's see what it looks like in there. It's going to afford us a little bit more depth front to back, look. And I think the greyness of the bark of this tree suits the sort of grey, smoky glaze of this pot. So now we know that tree fits in there, let's just get the pot prepared for the tree. So let's just spin that round and get a couple of pieces of mesh over the drainage holes. So a little piece for the middle, and then for those 2 sections there, and we'll use a bit of wire. We'll get a couple of bits of 2mm wire to wire it in with. So we're going to wire like this. Pop the mesh over the drainage holes. Quite easy to do, like that. And that drainage hole in the middle, I'm just going to make a little twist of wire, like so. And this is just going to secure that centre piece of mesh into the pot. And I would do it this way round so there's no sharp edges under the pot. We've just got those loops on the wire. And then another couple of those for these other two bits. So again, we just make a couple more these little twisty bits. Get the knack of doing that after a while. So a couple of little bits like that, and that's going to go up through that drainage hole. Another piece of mesh. Over there. Fold that out. And one more last piece. Like that. Underneath the pot. Up through the drainage holes like that. There we go. Onto the pot that's around here to me. I'm going to pop this into Akadama, that's what it was in before. So, fresh new bag of Akadama. Like that. So we'll pop quite a bit of this in the bottom of the pot because we've got some depth underneath the root ball. We need to raise this tree up quite a bit, so we've got the roots, the nabari of the tree sitting at the right sort of height within the pot. So let's keep going. Let's try somewhere about there. So front's towards me, so we'll take our tree carefully and lift it up. And I think in here, just settle it down onto that soil. Get it forward facing. I think we could probably get a little bit more over this side. Maybe another piece under there. I want to show those roots off, so I don't want it sitting too low in the pot, because otherwise when I fill it up, I'll bury those roots, and that's the feature of this tree really. I want to get it round enough. Like that. So I think with the front in there, I'll just spin it around so you can see. That's the sort of image we're wanting to go for, where we've got it comfortable and happy in the right position within the pot. And then I can fill in around with some Akadama. Like that, and we'll take this wire just across the back of the tree. Bit of a tricky tree to wire in really, because it's got such massive roots. It's hard to get any purchase across the top of them. But if we can get the wire around the back here, it's just going to help to secure it in just for the next few weeks until it gets established. And then use a chopstick or use a handle of my pliers just to work that Akadama down around the edge of the root ball, just to get rid of any air pockets, work it in around the roots. Really like this pot. I've tried quite a few trees in this pot over the last few weeks, and it's quite a heavy pot, quite imposing, and it does need a tree of a certain sort of thickness and heaviness to the trunk, because otherwise this pot easily dwarfs a lot of trees. It's mainly down to the fact that this pot got very straight sides, but also it's made more obvious by the fact that the feet here are incorporated into the side wall of the pot. Normally on a bonsai pot, they will set back a little bit more, but because they're solid all the way through, you get additional weight here visually. It does make the pot, really visually quite heavy. So luckily with this tree, with it being such a sort of chunky tree, it can cope with that feature on the pot, and it doesn't distract from it too much. In the next few weeks, I'll do a little bit of pruning on these twigs. I won't do it at this time of year. It doesn't appear to have any dieback on it over winter, but I'll probably put this in the greenhouse now. And then in about 3 or 4 weeks time, it will start popping new little buds out and growth out, and we'll be able to give it a little bit of a trim at that point. At the moment, there's just a couple of little bits here that we could sort of nip back. But it's not too out of shape, considering I haven't pruned it since the end of last year. And it's really just with this tree, just spent so long developing this apex. And looking back on that photograph of when I first got it, at the time I really didn't like this top. It was just so underdeveloped. There was just like a little stick growing up from it. I've been thickening this up here, developing these twigs. I've had a few of these sections in the past. I've had these wired down to help to fill in. Potentially this one can start to come down a little bit more so that we can get a build up of tree branches and ramification throughout. It's come quite a long way in the few years that we've owned it. So just a quick little repotting exercise to get it out of that broken pot and into this one. It'll stay in this for a couple of years now, be quite fine and healthy in that. So we'll pop it in the greenhouse, get it growing this year, and if I remember to, we'll bring it back out in spring when it's in full leaf, and we'll show you how it's progressed and how it's come on once it's in leaf. We'll take it over here and put it on display, and we can appreciate it a little bit more once it's over here against a new background. And then we're going to lift it outside and give it a water and let it drain and settle in to its new pot.